Fairy dusting. Fairy dusting is a marketing trick used by cosmetic and supplement companies. It means putting a tiny, useless amount of a famous ingredient into a product just so the brand can claim it on the label. The process is simple. A company wants to sell a face cream featuring vitamin C. Real, effective doses of active ingredients are expensive, so the lab adds a tiny fraction of a percent to the mixture. Legally, they can now plaster the ingredient's name in big letters on the bottle. This loophole really took off in the 1970s when new laws forced brands to list all their ingredients. When you buy the product, you read the exciting claims and expect great results. But because the ingredient is just sprinkled in like fairy dust, the physical effect on your skin is basically zero. This matters today because the wellness market is huge. Knowing about fairy dusting helps you look past the bold marketing and see what you are actually buying. Cheap hidden fillers. Supplement companies often use proprietary blends to hide the fact that they pack their products with cheap, powdery stuff like maltodextrin or rice flour. Back in 1994, a supplement law was passed in the United States to let brands protect their secret recipes. But today, it mostly acts as a convenient loophole. A brand mixes a tiny bit of expensive active ingredients with a huge amount of an inexpensive filler. Maltodextrin costs just pennies per pound, making it the perfect cheap bulk. You open up a big tub of powder or a bottle of capsules and it looks completely full. But because the label hides the exact breakdown, you do not realize you are swallowing scoops of empty, ineffective carbohydrates instead of the potent ingredients you actually wanted. You end up paying premium prices for processed corn or rice dust. This still matters today because checking a label for fully disclosed ingredient amounts is the only way to avoid buying an expensive bottle of nothing. Amino spiking scams. This is a shady trick companies use to make cheap protein powder look like premium stuff. To understand it, you have to see how protein is measured in a lab. Scientists usually test for total nitrogen because protein is packed with it. The problem is that cheap individual amino acids like taurine and glycine also contain nitrogen. So, a manufacturer takes a tub of powder with only 15 grams of real whey protein. They dump in 10 grams of cheap filler amino acids. The lab test reads the high nitrogen and spits out a score of 25 grams of total protein. You buy it, read the nutrition panel, and think you are getting pure muscle-building fuel. Instead, you are drinking cheap filler. In 2014, a massive wave of lawsuits exposed several major supplement brands for doing this exact trick. This still matters today because labeling rules remain pretty loose. You always have to check the ingredients list so you know exactly what you are paying for. Dangerous stimulant levels. This is what happens when supplement companies hide their active ingredients inside a proprietary blend. Back in the 1990s, the FDA allowed manufacturers to group ingredients together on a label to protect their trade secrets. Today, that loophole means a company can pack a massive dose of stimulants into a powder without telling you exactly how much is in the scoop. You read the label and see caffeine, exotic plant extracts, or even untested synthetic chemicals. But the exact milligram count is legally obscured. You mix the powder with water and drink it down, thinking it is a standard serving. Inside your body, that unknown dose hits your nervous system all at once. Your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure shoots up. You might feel dizzy, nauseous, or dangerously jittery because you just swallowed way more than the daily limit of 400 milligrams of caffeine. This still matters today because a simple morning workout drink can accidentally push your heart to the absolute limit. Masking synthetic additives. Sometimes a proprietary blend is just a clever disguise. It acts like a Trojan horse for things you probably do not want to consume. When the supplement industry exploded in the 90s, companies realized shoppers were avoiding artificial colors, cheap chemical sweeteners, and harsh preservatives. To get around this, brands started bunching these controversial additives together with a few active ingredients and giving the whole mix a fancy, trademarked name. You look at the back of the bottle and see a single line for something called an advanced flavor matrix or a performance delivery complex. It sounds like cutting-edge science, but inside that complex, the manufacturer is packing cheap synthetic dyes like Red 40, chemical preservatives, and artificial sweeteners like sucralose. Because the blend is proprietary, they do not have to tell you how much of it is just synthetic filler. This still matters today because it strips away your ability to know exactly what you are drinking. It proves that a premium label can easily hide a heavy dose of cheap junk, blocking price comparisons. This is the tactic of hiding exact ingredient amounts to stop you from doing basic shopping math. Back in 1994, a United States law allowed supplement makers to group ingredients into proprietary blends to protect their secret recipes. Companies quickly realized they could use this rule to hide cheap formulas. When a label just shows a total weight for a dozen different ingredients, you have no idea how much of the good stuff is actually in the scoop. If you find a competitor selling a similar powder for half the price, you cannot compare the two. You cannot check the cost per milligram. As a result, the brand creates a little monopoly. You end up staring at two bottles on the shelf, completely blind to their true contents. Because you cannot compare the raw numbers, you rely on the packaging, the celebrity endorsement, or the flashy logo. This still matters today because it lets companies charge premium prices for cheap ingredients, stripping away your power to find a fair deal. Dodging clinical evidence. This is the legal loophole supplement companies use to keep you in the dark about what you are actually swallowing. Back in 1994, a law was passed that let makers use proprietary blends. This means a brand can group a bunch of ingredients together on the back of the bottle without telling you the exact amount of each one. They just call it a trade secret. When they hide the recipe, independent scientists cannot test the product. A research lab cannot run a proper clinical trial to see if the formula works because they do not know the real dosages. The result is a market flooded with flashy labels making bold promises. You buy a fat burner based on the hype, but the active ingredients are usually watered down with cheap fillers. The company claims the product is packed with powerful herbs while giving you barely enough to do anything. This still matters today because you end up spending your money on unproven pills that are legally allowed to dodge the science. FDA trade secret loophole. It is a rule that lets supplement companies hide exactly what is in their products. Back in 1994, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act set up new guidelines. The government wanted to let companies protect their special recipes from getting stolen, just like a famous soda brand keeps its flavor a secret. So, the FDA allows manufacturers to group ingredients together under the label of a proprietary blend. The catch is, they only have to list the total weight of the blend and the names of the ingredients. They do not have to tell you the exact amount of each specific piece. Companies take advantage of this by stuffing the blend with cheap filler powders. They put those heavy, cheap ingredients at the top of the list. The expensive, effective ingredients get thrown in at the bottom in tiny, useless amounts. You end up paying top dollar for a bottle mostly filled with cheap dust, proving that a rule meant to protect genuine innovation now just protects bad formulas. Decoding supplement facts. A supplement facts panel is basically the rule book for what is inside your bottle, shaped by a 1994 law meant to standardize dietary labels. The main job of this panel is to tell you the dose of each active ingredient. However, companies often use something called a proprietary blend to hide their real recipe. By law, they only have to list the total weight of the blend and rank the ingredients inside it from heaviest to lightest. They do not have to tell you the exact amount of each specific item. Manufacturers take advantage of this by dumping massive amounts of a cheap filler at the front of the list to pump up the total weight. Then they sprinkle tiny, useless amounts of the expensive ingredients at the very end. When you look at the bottle, you see a long list of impressive ingredients under one big weight number. In reality, you are mostly just buying cheap filler. Learning to read these labels matters because it keeps you from wasting money. Independent lab certification. This is the process where outside organizations like USP, NSF, or Informed Choice test dietary supplements. Back in the early days of medicine, there were no standard recipes for what went into a pill. Even today, the government does not test supplements before they hit store shelves. Because of this, supplement companies pay independent labs to step in. Scientists at these facilities take random samples from a production batch. They run the pills through chemical analysis to check for harmful things like heavy metals, mold, or banned athletic substances. They also measure the active ingredients to make sure the amounts match the label exactly. When a product passes the test, the lab grants a seal of approval. You see this as a tiny USP or NSF logo printed directly on the bottle. This matters today because it gives you proof that what you swallow exactly matches what you paid for, keeping you safe from hidden chemicals.